Hi, and welcome to Untethered with Jenless, the podcast that's here to help you free yourself from the crap that's holding you back so you can claim the life you're meant to live. I'm your host, Jen, and in today's episode, we are going to talk about doing what you love and living your best creative life. Let's go. Hello, it's Jen. Oh my goodness. Today on the podcast, we have the most beautiful Kate Volman. So Kate and I connected a couple of years ago during the pandemic. She and I both started podcasts, both about creativity. We ended up floating around in the same circles. And I was like, okay, I need to know more about this individual. So I was on her podcast and we actually put that episode, you can go scroll way back to one of the Creative Commute episodes where I shared the episode where I was on her podcast because it was so much fun. And she's just such a fun human. Kate recently has written a book that comes out on June 1st. It's called Do What You Love. And it's really about inspiring people to live their most creative life and even without leaving the job that you're currently in. So what I love about what Kate shares is she's just like, you are so innately, so naturally, so amazingly creative. And in so many ways in our careers and in our roles, whatever that role is, whether it's mom, wife, daughter, whatever that role is, we are so often holding back those beautiful gifts and not fully recognizing and appreciating those creative gifts that we have. So in this conversation, we talk about giving ourselves permission to start being more creative, giving yourself permission to say, heck yes, I am creative, and what a difference that can make in your life when you make that declaration for yourself and how that can drive you to doing some of these cool things that Kate has done, like starting a morning show, writing a book. She's a CEO of Floyd Consulting. She's a speaker. She speaks on stage. She does so many cool things. And a lot of it is because she has allowed herself to step into her creativity, to own it, and to allow herself to do it messy. So everyone, I'm so excited to introduce to you Kate Volman. Hi, Kate.
Hello, Jen. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I think we're both so excited about this because we orbit in this similar space and we see each other here and there. And I think you just said, I'm always cheering you on and I feel exactly the same. You have this new book and I can't wait to talk about your new book and just all the things. And in fact, my listeners know who you are because you've kind of been on my podcast, but not really. I went on your podcast and then we were like, this episode is so good. I was like, can I put this episode on my podcast? And then people can learn about yours. Anyway, we did that thing a couple of years ago. Your podcast, Great for No Reason. So good. And so some people already know who you are, but we get to know you more, which is so fun.
Yay, which is so fun. And yeah, I can't believe it was already a couple years ago. This is crazy.
It is crazy. It really is. In fact, we were just talking about this because you're in Florida and I'm in Portland. And so I've doubled the distance between us since we last talked because I was in Kansas the last time.
How dare you? How dare you?
I know, so far away. It just occurred to me. We just booked a flight with my nephew to take him to the East Coast for a trip. And I'm like, that is really far away from Portland. It's like a long flight.
Yeah. Oh my God. I know. I was just saying when I go visit my friend, I have to mentally prepare for that flight for 3 months because which to anybody that goes overseas, you're like, that's not a big deal, Kate, but it is for me. I don't usually travel for that far.
Yeah. You also live in West Palm Beach. So you're like, I don't need to go anywhere. I live in paradise. It's good.
I mean, it is pretty great. It is pretty great. But the West Coast has all the beauty in it as well. So
yeah, it's different beauty. It's different. I was just telling you about Arizona. I'm like, it's so alien, but also so is the Pacific Northwest. There's so much moss and mold and it's just so different. Anyway, I'm sure that they're very used to these digressions. why you're on the podcast today is, first of all, because you're an amazing human being, but you have some great things to share with people that I know they're really going to appreciate hearing about creativity and about their own creative gifts and how they could be using those creative gifts now, today, wherever it is that they are. So I would just love to dive in and ask you this question, genuinely curious. Like, why do you care so much about creativity, Kate?
Because I feel very blessed that throughout my life, I didn't know it at the time, but throughout my career, I've always leaned into my creativity. But like a lot of people, I would never have classified myself as creative. I would have been one of those, no, 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 I'm a professional. We so are quick to kind of put ourselves in these boxes, which doesn't allow for creativity because we're told that musicians and artists, those are the creative people, writers and authors and poets, and that's creativity. But creativity is just how, whatever form that is calling to you. It's like your self-expression. It's the expressing yourself, your ideas. You take ideas that you see that are in your mind, and then you see something out into the world, and you kind of decide, "Ooh, I can put some things together and I can play around with it." And it's what you find fascinating. It's what you love to explore. And it's so important to me, creativity and sharing this message, because I have been able to use creativity throughout my career and to help advance in my career. I really feel like it's helped me live a more fulfilling life. I mean, that's what we want to do, right? We want to express ourselves and our opinions, our emotions, our feelings, and get things out into the world. Like, we need to create. People are meant to create. We're meant to be creative. We are all given gifts. And I talk about in the book, our creative pursuits are meant to be explored. And so often when we're young, we have all of these creative pursuits. We sing and dance and jump, and we want to play all of these different things, and we explore every single thing that interests us. And then when we get older, and of course we have these responsibilities and get a job and bills and all the things that come along with life, we forget about our creative pursuits. We leave those behind, and we just become so focused, and we don't think that life can be fun, and we don't think that it makes sense for us to explore how much we loved poetry or writing music. If we're not going to be a musician for a living, then why would we go learn the guitar? But you learn the guitar because it's your creativity being expressed, even if you're really bad at it. Just the idea, if you love doing it, it's meant for you for whatever reason. And so I know the power that creativity has to transform someone's life, because it's transformed my life. I've seen it in other people. I've seen it in the people that I get to coach. I've seen it throughout my whole career. Even when I get to share with some of the people that I work with, I remember I was working with this woman who she runs our numbers. She's in the accounting department, right? Like, she runs all of that. And she said, "Kate, I'm not creative." I said, "What are you talking about? I asked you to run this report for me." And she leaves and comes back with these charts and graphs and spreadsheets. And that is her creativity. I don't know how to do that. That is not my wheelhouse, but she was geeking out over it. I didn't ask her to create these great charts. She said, "I just thought it would be helpful for you." And I was like, this is gorgeous. And so she got to lean into that. And so she thought she finally was able to recognize, oh, I am creative in my own way, in numbers, in taking these complex ideas that maybe Kate doesn't yet understand, and then being able to put them in a way that she can visually see them. That's creative. Like, we get to be creative in our jobs. We get to be creative outside of our jobs when we're exploring what really interests us and what we are really good at.
Woo, preach.
I know, I'm like, I need to stop because I'm rambling. I will just keep rambling.
We vibe on this so deeply on this same topic, because I relate to what you said about, like, it just happened to me yesterday. Even though I believe so deeply in this, I still experience it myself. My coach was like, "Well, what do you do to be creative? Go do more of those things that make you creative. How do you like to express your creativity?" And I had this like locked up moment, because I don't paint. I don't create music. Like, those are not my forms of creativity. I like to bring creativity into little things that I do throughout the day. and my podcast and, little like creative ways of saying things, or like coming up with a weird metaphor. I think I used a zombie metaphor for meditation today. Not sure if it's working, but I did it. Like that's where I like to be creative, is having room to play in that. And that's what I really, really enjoy. But I have imposter syndrome when it comes to somebody saying, whether you believe in imposter syndrome or not, there's this feeling, this ego that kind of steps in as like, well, that's not the proper way to be creative. That's not the creative in the box that we learn throughout what you were saying about childhood. Children are so free to mess up. Like they're so okay with messing up, and they don't care what is creative and what is good and what is right. They just do it. We don't do that as adults.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. My little nephew is adorable. He's 10 years old and he does things that he is not good at. And he's like, I'm great at this. I'm like, yes, you are. I mean, he just has this confidence in him. Like, what? I'm great at baseball. I'm like, meanwhile, he's like in the field sitting down. I'm like, yep, okay. But that's like our childlike play that we lose. But I love that you said it's in the day-to-day things, because right when you said that, I thought about a lot of moms. A lot of moms, they're stressed out and they have all the kids that they're dealing with, kids and work and all the things. And your creativity shows up in your relationships. It shows up in how you parent. It shows up in the little notes that you leave your kids, or the way you make their lunch, or the things that you do that 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, they're going to say, remember when mom used to dance in the kitchen, or pull us aside and tell us these stories, or whatever that is for you, that you are making your child's life fun. That's your creativity. You're using it every single day in your parenting style. You use it every day in your relationships, and how you are playful with your spouse, your significant other, and making that relationship stay fun, right? Like all of that is your creativity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something to, and I'd be curious to hear your thought on recognizing and saying, this is my creativity. This is the way that I'm creative, and like owning the fact that this is the way that I do it. And there's something to like just really putting that stake in the ground and saying, I'm a creative being. And I'm here to create, and that's what I do. And this is how I do it. And it's okay that I don't do it this other way, because that's the way that they do it. There's just something really powerful about naming it.
I agree. I think that we're so quick to say things that we are and aren't. And creativity is one of those things where many people will say, oh, I'm not creative. And we've got to get out of that. We need to get out of that. The more that we say it, we're putting attention onto it, when it's just not even true. I wrote a poem. One of my creative pursuits is poetry. And I am just new into poetry over the past couple of years. And what's so funny is I love it, and I love learning, and I love studying it. And I love studying writing and the writing process. And I love learning more about poetry and how to create great poems and all those things. I wouldn't consider myself a great poet, but I do think that I have some poems that I'm like, this is good. Did I write that? But I never wanted to share my work. I actually have some poems, and this scared me. Talk about imposter syndrome. I thought, oh my gosh, what if I included some of my poems in my book? My book is about creativity. It's all about the process. It's all about sharing mediocre work, because we have to be able to do mediocre work in order for our work to get really great. And so I said, I'm going to share some of these poems. So I have this poem. It's called We Are All Artists. And I believe that to be true. We are all artists. And part of being an artist just means you're putting in the work. You're doing, and you and I could talk about this all day, because we have that in common, where we know that it's the showing up every day. It's one step in front. It's putting one step and then the next and then the next. Just like your podcast, you're doing your podcast, and oh my gosh, now I'm going to change the name because things changed and shifted, and I felt a little differently, and something is calling me. I actually don't think that you would ever have that kind of calling if you're not really leaning into your creativity. When you're leaning into your creativity, you're inviting the world, you're inviting your spirit to say, ooh, Jen, we're on the right path. Or, I think we want to kind of scooch over here, but you're leaning into what interests you. And when you're doing that, it opens the door to so many other areas of life that you might not be exploring right now. And that's what's so fun about it. And then the more that you do it, like sharing. So for me, again, on poetry, sharing the work, it makes it less scary because you're like, oh, I'm sharing this one poem. It doesn't have to be the best. Like this poem doesn't have to be the thing that I am known for forever. But then it eases my tension and I'm okay with sharing the next one and then the next one. And then I found one of my friends introduced me to this site called Writer's Digest. And I thought, oh, this is cool. And April is National Poetry Month. And they do write a poem. It's a 30-day, it's a poem a day challenge in the month of April. And I thought that's really hard, writing a poem a day. Geez, that's a lot of poems. And I thought, well, I should do it then. It's hard, so I should do it. And so I'm like, I'm going to do this. And Jen, some of the poems I write, I think, oh, this is a pretty decent poem. But some days I really don't feel like it, but I committed to doing the poem a day challenge. And I write the poem and I'm like, not my best work, but it doesn't matter because I did it. Like I did it. And that's what it was, is I think a lot of people, it stops people is we get so caught up in perfectionism. We get caught up in imposter syndrome. I mean, the book that I wrote, it shares the 7 myths stopping us from exploring our passions. I mean, that's basically what it is. And we talk ourselves out of doing all of these things because we just don't think we have the right skills. We don't have the right talent. We don't have the right resources, but none of that stuff matters. And you're a great testament to it because you one day during the height of COVID thought, I'm going to start this podcast. And you never had one before. And you just broke out your microphone. And you started having conversations and you did it. And you didn't know how people were going to respond. And then you show up and you start doing these live videos and you're just like dancing all around. I'm like, this girl is amazing. Most people are not going to do that because they look silly. Do I look silly? What are people going to say? And all of the things that stop us from pursuing the things that we really are excited about.
Mm-hmm. I love everything that you're saying here about leaning in, allowing yourself to do it mediocre, which really goes back to children. You know, they just like, this sounds fun. I'm going to do it. They don't think about all of the things. They don't think about doing it perfect, putting it out there perfectly. And just this social world that we live in, it's like so good in so many ways because you can start a podcast and start expressing yourself creatively. You can dance around on camera and be a total handball. And you can feel like you have to do it so perfectly because it's out there in the world and people are going to see it and you fear that they're going to judge it and all the things. So, okay, could you dive into a couple of maybe of these myths? What are the myths that you talk about in your book?
Yes. Okay. So I'm actually just going to share all of them and you tell me which one you want to dive into.
Yes.
All right. So myth number 1 is it's not possible. Myth number 2 is you're not enough or you're not good enough. Number 3 is you need permission. Number 4 is you need a reason. Number 5, there's not enough time. Number 6, it has to be perfect. And number 7, inspiration will strike.
Oh my gosh, these are all so good. Genius. I hope everybody say the name of your book. We're going to say it at the end, but somebody might be curious at this point.
Oh, it's called Do What You Love. It's a guide to living your creative life without leaving your job.
So good. Okay. The one I want to talk about is permission. Because it's the one that really like it stops me like feeling like we have to have permission. So can we chat about that? Why is this something that you felt?
So why does that resonate with you so much, Jen?
Because little Jen felt like she had to ask for permission to do something. And then there's 2 sides of it. There's the perfectionist side that's like, I want to do it right. And I want to do it good. And if I have permission, then I know that it's like, I can go and do it. Really, that's what it is. It's like, there's like this perfectionist side of like, just making sure that like all of the T's and everything is dotted so that I can go out there and do it. And somebody has gifted me the roadway to go do that.
It's almost like we sometimes are just waiting. We're waiting for someone to say, Jen, come do this thing. I see the talent in you and I need you to, and I want you to come explore this. That's not going to happen, right? Like that's not, because guess what? Guess who's thinking about you? Nobody. Everyone's thinking about themselves. Everyone's focused on them and themselves and their lives and what they're doing. So we think that, oh, one day someone's just going to recognize my talent, that I should have a podcast, or I should write a book, or I should play music, or whatever. Instead of just saying, oh, I'm going to write my own permission slip. I'm going to literally write down my own permission slip. Like I have that in the book to, I write down your name, give myself permission to do. What is that thing? What is the one thing that you keep saying that you want to do? I mean, I talk to people all the time, many women. I want to start a blog. I want to start a channel on YouTube. I want to write a book. So many people talk about wanting to write a book. And I believe that so many people have a book inside of them, but they feel like, oh, well, I need to find a publisher. I need to have somebody. No, you have a message. You want to share it. And that is the only permission that you need. And oftentimes we look to other people to validate us. So I feel like so often too, when we're asking for advice, it's almost like, I feel like we're asking people what we really want people to do for us is, we don't actually really want advice. What we're asking them for is permission and almost validation. Like we want someone to validate that our opinion matters, or validate that our idea is good. And that's just not going to happen, because I can't believe how many ideas die because somebody asked a friend of theirs, hey, should I start a podcast? And their quote unquote friend said, what? No, who's going to listen to you? What? Write a book? Who are you to write a book? Right? Like there are so many people in the world that have friends that should not really be their friends, and they're telling them, and they're kind of discouraging them from leaning into what it is that really interests them. So we get so caught up in, I need somebody to give me permission. I remember I really wanted to have a talk show. I was like, one day I'm going to have a talk show, and no one's going to call me up and say, hey, do you want to host our talk show? Right? No. And so I reached out to my local community, the newspaper. The newspaper was awesome. They were sharing really great stories. And I saw the owner of the paper at a networking event. And I said, hey, I've been meaning to reach out to you. Can we get together? So we got together, and I said, hey, Ryan, I said, your newspaper is great, but guess what? Really, these stories should be told via video. We should be doing a morning show. And he said, all right, that's kind of a good idea. He said, but I don't know. What does that even look like? I said, we'll just get our iPhone and we'll start doing a weekly show, just like once a week in the morning. And you're going to be my co-host. And he said, what? No, I don't have time for that. I'm not going to do that. And I go, yeah. Come on, let's just try it. So we started this show called Delray Morning Live. And the first week we did it, we were like, literally we were on his couch in his office with my little iPhone and a tripod. We went live on Facebook. And then every single week for like 2 years on Wednesday morning at 8:30 in the morning, we did this show, and we interviewed local politicians, and we interviewed nonprofit organizations and businesses and all the things that were happening in Delray Beach. And then everyone knew, hey, oh my gosh, let's invite Kate and Ryan to our event. Let's bring them out. Let's do these like little remote things. We like had this whole thing going. Nobody asked for it. Nobody said we needed to do this show. Nobody said it was a good idea. It was just something that I really wanted to try and explore. Meanwhile, that show is still going on. It has 2 different hosts because I ended up moving away, and then Ryan stopped doing it too. So we gifted the show to the Delray Beach Chamber of Commerce. They still do the show. I mean,
that's
so
amazing.
Cool. It still lives and breathes. And I was like, we created that. That's so cool.
And it wouldn't exist if you hadn't done it.
And it literally wouldn't exist. It was literally an idea that you have. And this is why it's so important for anybody that is listening, whatever that idea is that you have, we can't wait for permission. We can't wait for somebody to tell us it's a good idea. We just have to explore. And that's what's so cool about it is, even if it doesn't work, even if it's not quote unquote good, what you're going to learn from doing it, you win. You win simply by trying. You win simply by showing up. And what's so cool is what you might discover is you don't actually like it as much as you thought you would. Maybe you have this glamorized idea of what it's like to have a podcast or YouTube channel or to be an influencer or whatever your dream is. And when you get into it, you think, oh, I actually really this is not what I thought it was going to be. Because, nothing really is what we think it's going to be or look like until we're in it. But that's the fun of it. That's the fun of exploring it, is that you have the opportunity to just say yes to a new adventure and see what happens. And no matter what, you're going to walk out the other side a different person with different skill sets, with different people, with potentially new passions, potentially new ideas of what you really do find interesting, that, somehow the dots will connect. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is that Steve Jobs quote, which is, you can't connect the dots moving forward, only backwards. And so think about your life. You get to decide, oh, I wonder where this dot's going to land, and how is creating this going to help me in some way in the future? It's crazy. And the older that you get and the more experiences you have, you get to see, wow, had I not done that, I never would have explored this, or I never would have found this person. And that's what's so exciting. That's what living a creative life is. It's just exploring your ideas. It's allowing yourself to say yes to some of these things that might seem a little bit crazy at first, but they would bring so much joy to your life at the time. And that alone is worth every single second of it. And getting over your imposter syndrome and getting over this idea that we have to wait for somebody to pick us.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head you're like, why is it that you? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I gave like a couple of BS reasons, but really it's, I'm waiting for somebody to give me permission. Like you're so right that it's like, we're waiting for somebody to clear the path for us and be like, here you go. Here's the golden, here's the, we rolled out the red carpet for you to go and do it. But what you're saying is give yourself permission, and not just give yourself permission to do that thing, but to have the experience, to allow yourself the experience of going through that thing and seeing what fun it can create. What a huge shift between, well, I want to write this book and create this thing versus I want to have the experience of allowing myself to go through the process of writing the book and seeing what happens along the way. And I think about your show, it's like, maybe you did that show and you discovered, you know what? I don't like, you're a beautiful and amazing host. And I know you love it because you're so just phenomenal at it, but maybe you didn't like that, but you discovered, I really love this behind the scenes camera crew stuff. Like, look at what they're doing. That's so much fun. You just don't know where allowing yourself an experience could lead you to something interesting and new.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh, you're talking. So in the book I share, there's this graph. I call this the passion loop. And the passion loop is when we have this idea. So let's just say, I want to write a book. I've had this idea of writing a book. And then immediately your mind shifts to, yeah, I want to write this book. I really, really want to write this book. And then almost immediately after that, what happens? I don't know how to write. I don't have a publisher. I don't have time. You start making all the excuses as to why you can't, quote unquote, can't write the book. Right. And then, what do you have to, so then the reason why it's a loop is because a little bit later, when you're done with your excuses and you've kind of put it out of your mind, what happens after a couple of days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months? I really want to write this book. And now you're stuck in this loop of, I really want to, I make excuses. I really want to, I make excuses. And it just goes around and around and around. There's a fun little graph in the book. And then to break out of it, all you have to do is take action. Like, you do it anyway. Like, all the excuses that you have, you do it anyway. You take one single step forward. So if you want to write the book, what do? Tomorrow you write the outline, or you write not even a chapter. You just write 250 words, whatever you can do, the smallest thing that you can do to move forward. And that breaks you out of the passion loop. And when you break out of the passion loop, that's what happens, what you were just talking about. New experiences, new passions, you build relationships, you increase you improve your creativity, you kind of generate more creativity, you find meaning and purpose and fulfillment. All of those things happen when you say yes and you just take some type of action. Even if you don't ever finish the book, that's what's so cool too, is like, let's say you start writing and now you've decided, wow, I really thought I want to write a book, but I love writing every day. And now I just love writing these blog posts and these articles, or I love writing. I'm writing every day. So I'm doing more videos on YouTube and I'm writing scripts. You just never know what's going to happen. But but we have to give ourselves that permission to try. And we've got to break out of that passion loop, because so many of us, and me included, it was over a decade that I talked about writing this book. So it was like, not only I was in the passion loop for not even just days, weeks, months, years. And I know that a lot of people can relate, because I talk to people all the time that talk about, oh my gosh, I've been talking about doing this for 5 years, 10 years. Years go by and it's the same excuses. And the excuses are, I don't have the experience. I don't have the equipment. I have zero time. And again, that's one of the myths, is there's not enough time. I get it. Like, we're all very busy, and some of us have busier lives than other, in the sense of like family and kids and all of those pieces. But it's fascinating what we will find the time to do when we really want to do something.
It's so true. Another thing I would love to just go back to for a second that we do that might be part of this passion loop, like in the early stages, is that when you're feeling that passion, and maybe before the excuses, maybe it's after, I'm not exactly sure, we do what you mentioned earlier, when we ask permission and we tell somebody else about it. We tell somebody, and then we get a reaction. And that reaction could completely like derail the passion. And it can also sometimes, I've heard that this is a psychological thing, and I've been trying to watch it with myself. When we say something to somebody else, oh, I'm going to blank, we actually can get the same dopamine hit that we're looking for in actually following through with it. We'll get it just from telling somebody. And so then our passion also fizzles, because we're like, got that little hit from somebody telling me that's a great idea. And that's all like our brain was looking for. What we really want is to follow through with the thing, but our brain like relaxes and goes back into that like excuses loop because we got that little hit. Does that make sense?
It makes so much. In fact, I've heard that a number of times where some people have the case for not sharing your dreams with people because of that exact reason, because you do get that little hit of dopamine just by saying, because you know how they talk about the brain doesn't know what has happened or what has happened or hasn't happened. It's all in your mind. And so if you're saying it, your mind's like, oh, good job, you wrote the book. And it's like, no.
Yeah. What helped you to follow through? Because you did it. You wrote the book. You wanted to do it for years and you did it.
One thing that's so funny. And this story, I have been kind of sharing this story. I think it's interesting because it was so many years ago and I never thought I would share it. And I won't say who it was, but years ago, when social media just started coming out, right? In like 2008, 2009, I was following this influencer. Now, how many of us follow an influencer online, that somebody that we look up to, that we love, that we follow them on social? We feel like they're our bestie, right? We feel like they're our best friend and we love them. So I was following this gentleman, and I got on one of his webinars, and at the end, you were able to ask questions. And so I remember, Jen, this was so crazy. I still remember, sometimes you have those memories, you know exactly where you were, how you felt. And the question I have for him, because I was really wanting to build some kind of online community, because that's what everyone was starting to do back then. And it wasn't yet a thing like it is today. And I said, I have this idea where I want the brand to be all around, do what you love. And that man, in a very rude way, said, no, he didn't, I forget how he put it, but it was basically like, that's a stupid idea because that is a very generic term and everybody's using it. Like, that's like not a unique term and you have to be really niche. And that's just not going to speak to anybody. That's what he said. And I believed him. And so I went about my life and I did not do anything with that. And what reminded me of that was a couple of weeks ago when I was going through my Facebook and trying to figure something out. I said, oh my gosh, why do I have all these pages? Because again, years ago, I was like, everyone was creating all these pages. So I had all these pages set up, I don't know what for, thinking apparently I was going to run all these new pages. And one of my pages is called Do What You Love. Now, fast forward so many years later, and I write this book and I'm like, I'm calling it Do What You Love. Something that I have wanted to create many, many years ago. And I allowed this human to tell me that it wasn't a good idea, but I believed him. I didn't have to believe him, right? And especially today with so much content out in the world, I really do believe that whatever you put out, it's not even about what you call it. It's not about the name. It's about how are you showing up every single day consistently for your community, for your people. That's going to speak to people. That's what's going to get people's attention. You could call it whatever you want. Yes, it's great to have a fun, catchy name. And I totally understand why. Well, I understand his idea behind what he said, but I would never have said that to someone. And that was so interesting to me just because I thought, oh my gosh, look, however many years later, and I wrote this book and the title is Do What You Love, when so many years ago, I said I obviously wanted to have a site or something called Do What You Love. I created that page. And so, yeah, this is why I feel like whatever you want to create, whatever it is, I'm going to talk about in the book, you have to have creative friends. You have to have creative friends. And that's why I love meeting people like Jen, because your creative friends understand the challenges of creating and going through things. And your creative friends are never going to say things like that. They're never going to tell you to not try something. They're going to say, go for it. Well, how can I help you? What can we do? Let's try it. Why not? They're going to encourage you, and they're not going to discourage you from pursuing something that you find interesting. Now, I'm not this is why I subtitled the book the way it is too. I'm not telling people, oh, go do your passions and leave your job and go try to make a living doing something that you love immediately right away, or whatever that looks like. Not saying that you can't. That's a beautiful thing as well. That's a beautiful dream, but you get to do it today. You don't have to wait. You don't have to figure out all of the financial pieces of everything before you start doing more of what you love. You get to do that right now, starting today, starting immediately.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that story. I feel like I've talked about this book before. I don't know if you've read Big Magic by Elizabeth
Oh
Gilbert.
my gosh. It's literally
so good
here on my desk.
Of course it is. But she talks about ideas coming back around. And I love that idea came back around to you. It came knocking on your door again. It's like, hey, you didn't listen. You listened to that guy instead. This time I'm here again. And you were like, hello. And so without even fully realizing that it's something that you had wanted to step into before, you opened the door and you listened, and here it is. Now it became a reality. The timing was, it's like there is this idea of trusting the timing. And then there's also if back then I had the wisdom that I have now to simply step forward with something that I had felt passionate about, but it's your journey. And now you have this wisdom that you can share with others like you are today on this podcast, because you did have that experience. So thank you.
Can I just share with you? This is so funny. Literally on my computer on this little pink note card. Do you see what that says? Trust in the timing of your life.
Love it.
That is what's on my computer. That is my theme of the year, is trust in the timing of your life, because I think you have a good amount of women listeners, and we are so mean to ourselves. We are so mean to ourselves, and we think I should have, I could have, I would have, and all of these things. And we think about the past, and it's so hard for us to let it go sometimes. And sometimes we just have to lean into, hey, it's all meant to, somehow the pieces are going to connect. And I love to just envision that. I love to envision God, or whatever you believe in, or whatever it is for you, the universe, whatever you call it. I just like to believe that on the other side, that he's kind of like, I wish you could see all the things that I have ahead of you. Just you keep doing you keep exploring what's meant for you. You keep on all of those things that are in our heart. They are so there for a reason. They are not going away. Our dreams are there for us. They are meant to be there, and they're not going away. Now, sometimes we try to suppress them and make them go down, but they always show back up. It happens to everybody. It does, because if it's truly meant for you, you're not going to be able to to run away from it. You're just not. It's if it keeps showing up, then you need to listen to that. You need to explore that. And wherever you are in your journey, wherever you are, whether it's the start of your career, you're in the middle, you're older, like there's never a bad time. I think about that too sometimes. I think somebody asked me, well, don't you wish you did write this book 10 years ago when you first thought about, or when you first started talking about it? Because, you could have written so many more books by now. And I said, I feel like that's not the right question, right? Like, I mean, I can't go back 10 years and write this book, but I can think about, well, what's my next book that I want to write and what is that going to look like? And I can only go from here. The past no longer exists. Today exists, and I can think about tomorrow. And we can get so stuck in these ideas in our head. And so, yeah, we got to get out of our heads. We are overthinkers to the max.
So much wisdom. You have just shared so much wisdom. And you are right that most men don't do this. Most men don't sit in this kind of regret and like to the extent that women do. And that is a generalization I fully recognize, but as women, we do it a lot more. And there's a lot of reasons that we do it a lot more than men do. But there is a reason this podcast is called Untethered because I have realized that that's like, we have got to untether ourselves from the past. We have got to untether ourselves from these like strong needs for things in the future and live in the present, enjoying, allowing ourselves to get messy and get creative and do a lot of the things that you were suggesting here. Allow ourselves to write the book, because now you get to write a second book from the perspective of somebody who's written a book, so like this next one that you get to do is so juicy because you've had this experience. Now it's like, how cool that you're getting to do that. And just all of the things that you have done in your life. You just jump in with both feet into things, it seems like, all the time. And I love that about you. It's so admirable.
Oh, well, I feel the same about you. I feel, when I get to see all your posts and you up on stage, and I said, oh, that is where she is meant to be. You could feel the energy. I could feel just your smile and I was like, that audience was lucky today to be able to experience whatever it is that you brought to them, because you just exude passion and enthusiasm and really wanting to support people and help people. And, you asked in the beginning why it was so important, this topic of creativity, and it's the same for you. And so you totally get it. And I know that so many people don't have that, and they are just not living out their dreams. They're just not living the passions that are inside of them. And there's no reason to not. There just isn't. And so much of that is mindset. So much of that is just kind of the things that we set up and structure, how we structure our day and what we're really committed to doing. And so be committed to your creativity and get some creative courage and start exploring some of the ideas that are really meant for you.
Yeah. And I think the listeners of this podcast, they either want to have some awareness of these dreams, have some awareness of their magic, they're waking up to it, or they're doing it, they're aware and they're excited and jazzed. So there's somewhere in the middle of this, which honestly is where I'm always living, right? It's like somewhere in the middle of like, ooh, there's something fun, but I'm scared, but it's like we're always living this. And so love that you're just throwing out that invitation to anyone to check out Kate's book. Go listen to, we only dove into one of those, what did you call them?
Oh, the 7 myths,
one of those myths. And she goes into all 7 of them in the book. So, Kate, where can people find that book?
Oh, they can go directly to Amazon. So it's officially launching on June 1st. So you can go to Amazon and if you just Google, if you just type in the chat box, it's Do What You Love, Kate Volman, and or you can go to katevolman.com and find it that way. But yeah, I'm so excited to get it out into the world. And it's definitely a nerve-wracking thing. I know you've had different authors come on the show, but it's a nerve-wracking thing to have your ideas out into the world. But hey, this is all part of the creative process, and I'm excited about it. And yeah, I am working on my second book. So it's once you get the habit going, you keep doing it.
That's so awesome. Okay, where else can people connect with you? Where can they follow if they want to follow along with your book journey?
I always think it's so funny now when people ask, right? Because like you can find anyone anywhere if you just Google them. But
So
I'm
true.
most active on Instagram and LinkedIn, and you can find everything over on katevolman.com.
Beautiful. Everybody connect with Kate. You're such a light. You have a LinkedIn series, and I think you used to have are people what's the social media platform that you and I used to have so much fun on?
Oh, on Clubhouse?
Clubhouse. Are you still there? Massive
Yeah,
optimism.
so I do a segment on Clubhouse well, it's changing now, but yeah, I still do a segment in this club called Breakfast of Champions, and we are up bright and early. So at 5 a.m, they start the room, and it's all very motivation, education, inspiration. We do all of that. It's been really fun. I also have a weekly newsletter that I send out. It's called Massive Optimism. And it's just, I share a couple of ideas. I share 5 ideas to inspire you. So I share lots of book recommendations. I share journaling prompts. I share quotes. I've been sharing a lot of music that I've been discovering lately. So if you're interested in just getting some fun inspiration before you start your week, you can go to massiveoptimism.com and check that out.
Love it. You are always creating. So beautiful. Okay. If you could share one last thing that I ask every guest, Kate, where do you see the magic in the world?
Where do I see the magic in the world? I see the magic. I mean, it's so cheesy, but I was going to say, I see the magic in every human in some way, like hidden inside. I feel there's so much beauty in everyone, and some people it shines really brightly, and other people you have to kind of get it out of them. But when you ask people about their dreams, that magic shows up, and the light in their eyes just gets it brings them back to life. And so there's magic in every single person, and we get to ask them about what they find interesting, what their dreams are, and we can kind of see a little piece of that in everyone.
So beautiful. And you really invite that magic out in people. So thank you for being you, and thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you for being you. And thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Hope you enjoyed everything there that Kate had to say about your magical creative gifts and what you have to offer the world, and how easy it really is when we allow ourselves to just be a little bit messy, to just get out there and start doing it. You don't have to be an A student of every creative practice that you try. You could be a C, D, F student. Just get out there and bring that childlike wonder back into your life and see where it leads you. If you're interested, do it, try it, see what happens. If you don't end up being an amazing guitar player, maybe you'll discover that there's something about the way that picks look. Maybe you'll start making necklaces with them. Whatever that thing ends up being, you just never know where trying one thing could lead you. So much fun. If you did enjoy this episode, I encourage you to share it with a friend who might need to hear something about this message, about inviting more creativity into your life and owning your creativity and giving yourself permission. If you haven't left a review of Untethered with Jen Liss on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, I encourage you to leave a review. That really helps this podcast get into more listening ears, and I so appreciate it. You just keep shining your magical unicorn light out there for all to see. I'll see you next time.